No one expected that a seemingly ordinary conversation between Rob Reiner and Billy Crystal would become such a moving moment for both of them. For the first time, Rob didn't talk about movies, fame, or the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, but about his family, the wounds that never healed, and the secrets he had kept hidden for years. As his voice trembled and tears welled up, Billy Crystal realized this wasn't just a heart-to-heart between two old friends, but the final confession of a father, a son, and a man burdened with too much weight. If you want to understand what truly happens behind the scenes and why this moment silenced Hollywood, keep watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss these true, profound, and never-before-told stories. Those closest to Rob Reiner are plunged into deep grief and shock. Just days after the legendary director of When Harry Met Sally and his wife, singer Michelle Reiner, were found dead in their Los Angeles home, Hollywood seemed to be reeling. The tragic news spread quickly, leaving a heavy silence in the entertainment industry. Billy Crystal, a close friend of Rob's for decades, along with several other close friends of the couple, released a poignant tribute, filled with love and loss. In that moment of choked emotion, Billy's voice trembled as he admitted, "He didn't listen to my warnings." A short statement, but one that contained an unspeakable anguish. When Billy finally spoke publicly about the heartbreaking deaths of Rob and Michelle, it became clear that this was more than just sadness. It also involves guilt, emotional shock, and the torment of knowing that certain things were foreseen, yet powerless to prevent them. Billy shared that one of the most haunting aspects of this story is how many American families have faced and continue to face addiction. Previously, it was seen as a moral failing, but the reality is far more complex and cruel. Here, we witness the tragedy of a family that seemed to have it all: a famous, wealthy father, described by friends as devoted, a loving mother, and a son they did everything to protect. Even as he grew older, they relentlessly tried to pull him out of the cycle of addiction. Yet, like countless other families across America, sometimes that demon is the most difficult enemy to defeat. The Brentwood house, once filled with laughter, music, and intimate gatherings, was now eerily silent. For decades, it had been a sanctuary of love and friendship. But beneath that peaceful exterior lay the anxieties and fears Rob Reiner had silently concealed. Billy's opening revealed the emotional burden Rob had carried for years: the pressure, the sleepless nights, and the unspoken worries. According to private memories shared with trusted journalists, their friendship was far deeper than the public image suggested. That crucial meeting took place on a quiet Sunday afternoon, a moment that would haunt Billy Crystal forever. Just weeks before the tragedy, Billy drove to Rob's Brentwood home after a short but serious phone call. Rob's voice on the phone lacked its usual humor. He simply said, "I need to talk to you. Not about movies." That's it. No joking, no beating around the bush. And Billy immediately understood that something was very wrong. The moment the front door opened, that feeling became even more pronounced. Rob wasn't his usual self. Tired, his beard unkempt, his clothes wrinkled, and his eyes heavy. When they shook hands, Billy noticed the grip was weaker than ever, lacking its familiar vitality, as if an invisible burden was weighing down Rob Reiner. Inside, a heavy silence hung over the house. Rob didn't turn on the TV or play music as usual. Instead, he quietly poured 2 glasses of water, placing one on the table without touching it. His gaze constantly drifted toward the dark hallway leading into the house, and that repeated, small glance made Billy feel uneasy. Finally, Rob spoke, his voice distant and slow. "Things are very messy in my family right now. I haven't told anyone, but I'm completely exhausted." At that moment, Billy realized this wasn't just everyday stress. Rob was carrying a much greater burden than he could admit. When Billy asked what was really going on, Rob opened up about his son, Nick. He explained that Nick had had a serious relapse earlier that month, and since then, his personality had completely changed. He became short-tempered, easily irritated by trivial matters, and some nights his mood would suddenly shift, forcing Michelle to leave the room to avoid another argument. Rob recalled a specific night before Thanksgiving, when a tense confrontation erupted in the kitchen over money and Nick's treatment. He didn't recount the full details, but Rob's face changed color when he mentioned that night. It was the first time he admitted to a fear deeper than anxiety, a fear he had never shared before. Rob fell silent, rubbing his forehead and staring at the floor, lost in thought. It's understandable that, at a party full of celebrities where unusual behavior is sometimes considered normal, seeing Rob like that would have been unsettling. Billy was one of those he approached, and in conversation, Billy realized it wasn't anger but exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion you find in someone who's fought a battle they can't stop for too long. Rob confessed he was trying to keep Nick close, hoping that family support could help him recover. Then he said something that had haunted Billy Crystal for years. "I'm just afraid that if I push him away, I'll be the one hurting him." The words came out slowly, trembling, while Rob clenched his fists, his fingers intertwined as if trying to keep himself from breaking. Billy decided he had to be frank. He leaned toward Rob, looked him straight in the eye, and said that Rob's love for his son was admirable, but the safety of both him and Michelle couldn't be ignored. He had to set boundaries, no matter how painful it was. Rob didn't interrupt, just sat silently, his eyes red, listening to every word. Finally, his voice weary, Rob said, "I understand what you're saying. I'm worried too, but I can't see my son as a danger." He explained that Nick had suffered too much in his life, and a wrong decision or feeling rejected could plunge him back into despair. As he spoke, Rob leaned back, sighing deeply, like a man who had lost his composure. When the conversation ended, he walked toward the window, looking out at the backyard where laughter and joyful gatherings had once echoed. Then he turned back, gently placed his hand on Billy's shoulder, and said he would think about everything they had discussed. The initial exchange was rather awkward, and the atmosphere became even more tense because Billy had met Hader earlier that night. Although Rob had introduced Hader politely, the moment Hader approached, asking questions like, "What's your name?" or "Are you famous?" unease immediately spread. The atmosphere became so uncomfortable that Hader later described it as frightening. As he left Rob's house, the Brentwood night had fallen, but that heavy feeling lingered in Billy's mind. It kept repeating itself, tightening in his chest each time he recalled it, leaving him with a rare thought. Something terribly wrong was happening, something insidious, slow, and almost invisible to anyone outside that house. Only when Billy began to recount those memories did people gradually begin to understand the true picture behind Reiner's door. Everything seemed completely different, as if the warning signs had always been there, but ignored until it was too late to understand. When Billy first heard about these events, he admitted he could hardly believe it. "This isn't the Rob I know," he said. What puzzled Rob wasn't just the severity of the situation, but also how things unfolded. A series of strange, silent moments, accumulating slowly, leading to an unexpected tragedy. The Reiner family home had never been quiet. It was always filled with laughter, music, the rhythm of calls and daily life, of gatherings with friends and shared stories. But that week, everything became eerily silent. The only silence was broken when someone arrived for an appointment, knocking repeatedly without receiving an answer. And what they discovered inside changed everything, sending shivers down the spines of anyone who witnessed it. For Billy, this detail haunted his mind. How could hours have passed in a once vibrant house without anyone realizing something terrible was happening? Later, Billy learned that when Romy entered, she saw her father first and ran out in shock. Michelle was also found, but the horror lingered. That image reminded Billy of Rob's description of the tension in the house. It didn't erupt all at once, but spread silently, room by room, like a shadow obscuring the light. The situation at the time perfectly reflected Rob's description, painful, precise, and terrifying. What struck Billy was the long wait before anyone came to help, because Rob was always quick and protective of those around him. The thought that his house could have been shrouded in such heavy silence for so long left Billy stunned. The silence was so heavy it was almost incomprehensible to Billy. It reminded him of Rob's confession. Sometimes the silence in their house was terrifyingly heavy, the pressure permeating every corner. Billy admitted he couldn't explain it from an investigator's perspective, as he wasn't trained for it. But he sensed its weight, a feeling only those close to him could understand. From what Rob shared, the tragedy didn't stem from a single chaotic moment, but was the result of years of accumulated emotional tension, silently developing, and finally exploding all at once. All those details, those feelings of unease and conflict, accurately reflected what Rob had described a few weeks earlier, leaving a deep and lasting mark on Billy's mind, making that period unforgettable. Those moments when Nick completely lost control caused things to escalate faster than anyone could stop. What convinced Billy even more that something was wrong was what he heard afterward about the state of the house. Strangely, everything was perfectly intact, undisturbed. The furniture was still tidy. Everything was in its place, with no signs of forced entry or intrusion. To Billy, this meant only one thing. Whatever had happened, it originated from within, not from the outside. He had spent countless evenings in that house, knowing its warmth, its peaceful and familiar rhythm. The fact that everything still looked normal made it even harder for him to accept. The pain didn't come from the outside world, but occurred in a seemingly ordinary moment, inside a space once filled with laughter, joy, and love. Billy also couldn't forget Romy's reaction. She ran outside in such a panic that she couldn't bring herself to go back inside. For Billy, that moment spoke volumes, proving that no one in the family could have been prepared for what was to come. As he read the reports later, a wave of doubt washed over Billy, as if a part of his world had shattered and could not be mended. But what troubled him most was Nick's absence. Nick wasn't there when the house was discovered, and Billy couldn't ignore the implications. He didn't rush to conclusions, but the memory of that afternoon in Brentwood, when Rob admitted he no longer knew how to control his son's unpredictable behavior, came flooding back. Nick's absence was like a missing piece, a piece that made all of Rob's past anxieties resonate more intensely than ever. As he pieced the events together, Billy began to realize this wasn't just a random tragedy, but the inevitable result of a chain of events that couldn't have been prevented in time. From that moment, the story took a different turn. Nick's name gradually disappeared from newspaper headlines, appearing only in Rob's private conversations with close friends. While the public tried to piece together the events, Billy was constantly haunted by one question. It wasn't what happened, but who had disappeared before things got worse. When Billy learned that Nick Reiner wasn't there, his heart sank. Nick wasn't a stranger. He'd known him since childhood. Born in 1993, Nick had always carried within him Rob's deepest love, but also his greatest worry. For years, Rob had confided in Billy about the difficulties Nick faced, battles against addiction, attempts at recovery, and painful relapses that placed unspeakable pressure on the entire family. Billy clearly remembered Rob telling him that Nick had disappeared for months, completely cutting off contact, leaving everyone both terrified and hopeful that he would return. So when Billy learned of Nick's disappearance that day, all of Rob's past fears resurfaced, precisely what Rob had feared, the unpredictable moment when everything could fall apart at any time. Then another disturbing detail emerged. According to rumors circulating in the entertainment industry, just hours before the tragedy, Nick and Rob had a heated argument at a Christmas gathering Billy had organized, under the watchful eyes of Conan O'Brien and many other celebrities. Witnesses reported Nick's mood was erratic, his energy unstable, and the exchange had drawn unwanted attention, foreshadowing simmering family conflicts that no one had been able to prevent. That story deeply shocked Billy because it perfectly matched what Rob had shared with him. He realized how quickly things could escalate when emotions ran high and pressure built up over time. Soon after, that picture was confirmed in the most painful way. On December 14, 2025, shocking news spread throughout the entertainment industry. Authorities announced that Nick Reiner was being charged in connection with what happened at the Brentwood home. He faced 2 serious charges, directly related to the deaths of his parents and other elements of the case. Billy knew that Nick had left Brentwood before the bodies were discovered and were later located near the University of Southern California campus, more than 20 kilometers away. That distance said a lot to Billy. It perfectly matched Rob's description. Nick sometimes acted instinctively, running away when emotions got the better of him, panicking instead of thinking. When the court photos surfaced, showing Nick bound and wearing a prison uniform, Billy was completely devastated. All the warnings he'd heard from Rob or from his own intuition seemed meaningless. Billy knew that Rob now felt the tragedy vividly, almost undeniably. Nick was being held without bail, awaiting his next court hearing in early 2026. Legal sources told Billy that investigators believed the situation stemmed from long-standing family tensions, particularly in the final 24 hours before things went wrong. Although Billy wasn't directly involved in the investigation, this information only reinforced his belief. This wasn't an external act, but the result of simmering internal family tensions built up over years. The tragedy stemmed from the interplay of love, exhaustion, and despair, three elements so intertwined that the lines were blurred. What hurt Billy the most was realizing that Nick, the son Rob had poured his heart and hope into, had become the center of the very pain Rob had warned him about. Being Charlie wasn't just another film in Rob Reiner's career. For him, it was a desperate plea, a desperate hope to save his son. Billy recounted that Rob had believed the film could change Nick's life, bring hope, and rebuild their father-son relationship. But over time, those deep-seated struggles never truly disappeared. So, when Billy witnessed Nick being led into court, it felt like witnessing the collapse of all the hope Rob had held onto for years. Deep down, Billy admitted that he had long feared this outcome, not because he wanted it to happen, but because all the signs had foreshadowed it. Rob's heart-wrenching confession late at night, the heated argument at the Christmas party, Nick's mysterious absence, and then the haunting arrest dozens of miles from home, all combined to create an undeniable chain of tragedy. As the investigation moves into formal court proceedings, Billy realizes there's no turning back, no way to escape the truth. The story opens a new, painful chapter where love, loyalty, and friendship can no longer shield the harsh reality. Close friends in Beverly Hills say Billy begins to withdraw from public life. He skips dinners, avoids gatherings, and spends quiet evenings driving through Brentwood before returning home in silence. Those close to him observe that he looks like a man so consumed by memories he can't carry them. For Billy, losing Rob is more than just losing a friend. It was also the loss of a part of his soul, an irreplaceable source of emotional support. Rob was the first call when life started to get better, a source of comfort when things got tough. And what Billy couldn't accept was knowing it was all over, and that he wasn't there to share, to help, to comfort his best friend in his final hours. Those close to him revealed that Billy was haunted by his last encounter with Rob. His friend's weary eyes, his trembling voice, and the silence that enveloped the room were still etched in his mind. Billy told friends that he sensed something was wrong, but tried to reassure himself that Rob would get through it. That belief, which he thought was hope, became a scar he knew would never heal. He began to blame himself for leaving too soon, for not begging Rob to stay one more time, for not doing more to prevent what was about to happen. He tormented himself even more when he looked back at the signs he had overlooked. Some close friends said that Billy had reviewed old messages, called logs, read every story, every joke they had shared. One friend revealed that Billy quietly exclaimed, "I thought I had plenty of time. I was wrong." Those words became a private confession, not anger, but profound regret. The pain turned inward, not toward Rob or anyone else. He was angry at himself for being too gentle, too trusting, and for thinking that love alone could keep things from falling apart. The anger didn't erupt, it was buried, causing him chronic insomnia. Friends said Billy often woke up before dawn, pacing back and forth in the house, or sitting silently by the window, lost in inescapable thoughts. The hardest reality for him was realizing that the nightmare he and Rob had feared had come true, just as they had foreseen. That truth trapped him between two unbearable emotions, knowing it was inevitable, but being unable to prevent it. That feeling of powerlessness was more painful than the actual loss. He had not only lost a close friend, he had lost the chance to save Rob when it mattered most. Those in the entertainment industry say Billy gradually withdrew from the spotlight for months. He declined talk shows, memorial services, and related interviews. A close friend said Billy couldn't mention Rob without breaking down in tears. Every time Rob's name was mentioned, old wounds would reopen, and the guilt of not being there for his friend during those crucial moments would resurface. In that fragile emotional moment, Billy began to look back, not to make excuses, but to remember the light that had shaped their friendship. He wanted to hold on to the laughter, the joy, and the years they shared before tragedy struck. Gradually, the story shifted from heartbreak to something gentler, a deep bond spanning nearly 50 years, a friendship based on loyalty, creativity, and a shared love of their profession. When Billy finally decided to speak publicly, he didn't do it in front of cameras or at a major event. Instead, along with his wife Janice and Rob's lifelong close friends, including Albert Brooks, Martin Short, Larry David, Mark Shaman, Barry Levinson, and many others who have been with them on their journey to build Hollywood, they issued a heartfelt statement through the Associated Press. A farewell filled with dignity, respect, and emotion, honoring both Rob and Michelle Reiner. For Billy, the statement held profound meaning. It wasn't just a public message, but a love letter to a friendship that had shaped his life. The words perfectly captured the core of their bond from the beginning, a shared love of storytelling, the kind of storytelling that made people laugh, cry, and feel moved in the dark of movie theaters. That was Rob's world, and Billy had been with him all along the way. Their friendship began in the mid-1970s on the set of All in the Family. Rob was already a star, while Billy was still striving for his big break. From their first conversation about music, a connection was formed. They saw life through the same lens: humor, sincerity, and heart. It was never about fame. What mattered was the genuine connection. Short conversations between takes gradually developed into an unbreakable friendship. They became creative partners, completely trusting each other. When Rob started directing, that relationship grew even stronger. Billy was more than just an actor. He was a listener, a collaborator who helped Rob refine every joke, every shot, every emotion. It was a friendship built not only on shared success, but on deep respect and trust that lasted a lifetime. When tragedy struck, Billy's world seemed to shrink. The laughter and bright lights of Hollywood faded when Rob was no longer there. Despite constant invitations, he remained silent. Even when he did speak, his friends noticed his voice was heavy, a mixture of pain and overwhelming memories. The pain wasn't just the loss of a friend. It was the loss of a part of his past, a part of himself. He tried to maintain his daily routine, morning walks, breakfast with Janice, phone calls with old friends, but nothing was the same. Every sound, every familiar face reminded him of Rob. Just one line from When Harry Met Sally was enough to make him freeze. The laughter that once filled him with joy now carried sadness, a reminder of a world that no longer existed. Behind closed doors, Billy spent long nights immersed in memories, photographs, old scripts, handwritten notes from the decades they spent together. Photographs from The Princess Bride, A Few Good Men, This Is Spinal Tap, and of course, When Harry Met Sally. Each picture capturing two men who had built something great together. It was miraculous that they were together. Friends said Billy's house gradually became a quiet museum, preserving every moment of Rob's life. Every little corner held a piece of memory of his deceased friend. He didn't want outsiders to see how deeply the loss affected him, but those close to him knew. Some nights, he quietly reread Rob's old notes, whispering that the things that once made him laugh now made him cry. That friendship had become an inseparable part of his life, something that time could not erase. As Hollywood moved on with new shows and award seasons, Billy began to think about how to protect Rob's legacy. He didn't want the world to remember Rob Reiner only through tragedy. He wanted people to remember him as a man, an artist, a father, a storyteller, someone who touched the hearts of millions. Quietly, Billy began a memorial project dedicated to Rob's life and career. He contacted Rob's longtime collaborators, writers, directors, actors, who had shared creative moments with him. The goal wasn't a sensational documentary or fame-seeking production, but a living tribute, brimming with memories, voices, and love. Billy's vision was simple: to remind the world that behind the fame, Rob Reiner was a man who believed in kindness, connection, music, and the power of storytelling to heal and unite people. In the early stages of the project, Billy revisited old interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, and listened to Rob's voice for the first time in months, and it completely overwhelmed him. Friends say he sat there, headphones on, tears silently streaming down his face. He told Janice that it felt like being in the same room with Rob again, hearing his laughter, his directing, his jokes, and the way he breathed life into the world Rob loved. In that moment, it seemed nothing had changed. Before long, the memorial project grew far beyond Billy's wildest dreams. Almost everyone who had worked with Rob wanted to participate. Meg Ryan, Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, Sally Field, and many others shared memories of Rob's true self, not just as a filmmaker, but as the man behind the camera. These stories painted a portrait of a kind, funny, and compassionate man. Each one reminded Billy that Rob's legacy wasn't defined by the ending of the story, but by how he lived brilliantly and inspired so many others. Despite pouring his heart into the project, Billy still struggled with guilt. He often remembered their last conversation, Rob's weariness evident, yet his love for his family still burning brightly. He told a friend, "If I could relive that day, I would never leave. I would let him rest. I think love would be enough." That thought alone became an unhealing wound. Gradually, Billy realized that healing didn't come from self-blame, but from cherishing the friendship that had shaped his life. He began reappearing, quietly and humbly, at Rob's memorial gatherings. Each event was filled with tears and gratitude. At a moving memorial in Los Angeles, Billy spoke softly but firmly. Rob believed in people. Even in the darkest stories, there's always a reason to smile, to love, and to keep trying. The audience rose to their feet and applauded. Many wiped away tears. It wasn't just a speech, it was peace, finally finding its place in Billy's heart. Friends noticed subtle changes in him. Billy began to smile again. Laughter, once absent from his home, now echoed softly once more. He returned to writing, performing, and creating. But there was something new in his tone, a wisdom, a gentleness, and a thoughtfulness. This wasn't the old Billy Crystal chasing the next laugh, but a man who understood the fragile and precious value of life. By early 2026, the memorial project had become a major turning point. Major studios joined in to help with distribution, and Hollywood came together to show rare solidarity in honoring Rob Reiner's legacy, ensuring that his memory and influence would live on in the hearts of the public. At the premiere, Billy walked the red carpet alone, in a simple black suit, his eyes sparkling under the lights. He didn't pose for the cameras, didn't give interviews. He just stood there quietly, waiting for the light to fade. When Rob's voice echoed through the theater once more, Billy wiped away a tear, a single drop falling silently, then offered a gentle smile. After the film ended, Billy remained seated as the credits rolled. A simple message he had written appeared on the screen, dedicated to Rob, the man who taught the world how to laugh, to love, and to trust in humanity. As he stepped outside into the cool Los Angeles air, something in Billy's heart finally settled. The pain was still there, but it no longer tormented him. He understood that, though nothing could replace the decades they had shared, Rob's presence would always live on in his mind. Every laugh in the theater, every touching moment in the film, carries Rob's spirit, guiding everyone forward. Billy doesn't find peace by forgetting. He finds it by remembering. Remembering the friend who taught him that stories can heal, love can overcome pain, and true friendship never ends. When Harry Met Sally remains a living testament to the extraordinary bond between them. The film is more than just a classic. It's the result of two creative souls who completely trust each other. Billy often tells his friends that Rob is one of the few directors who allows them absolute freedom as artists, while still providing gentle guidance. That bond is built on collaboration, not ego, and that's what creates the magic. In a statement sent to the Associated Press, Billy and Rob's closest friends described Rob as a master storyteller, someone capable of seamlessly transitioning between laughter and tears, comedy and tragedy, fiction and reality. These weren't empty flattery. but rather the words of those who had shared decades of creative success and challenges with him. Everyone who worked with Rob knew he cared deeply about the team. Actors, musicians, editors, everyone on set. He never let anyone feel insignificant. On the contrary, he made them feel like they were part of something much larger. For Billy, writing those words was both a healing process and heartbreaking. This time, he had to speak of Rob in the past. Rob wasn't just a collaborator, he was family. Billy remembers the nights at the Reiner family's home in Brentwood, the dinners filled with laughter, the long conversations about family, America, and the purpose of art. Those moments now live on in his memory, but for Billy, that memory is everything, a part of his soul, a part of a friendship that will never fade. Memories became a bittersweet mix when Billy learned what had happened afterward in that very house. It tore his heart apart more than anything else. The memorial also honored Rob and Michelle's marriage, a relationship built on loyalty, humor, and undying love. Billy always admired how Michelle was a solid support for Rob, his life partner, his balance, his compass. Losing both of them, in his words, was like losing a part of his own story. In the final lines of the joint memorial, Billy and his friends quoted, "It's a Wonderful Life," one of Rob's favorite songs. The films Rob created reminded the world that a person's influence can spread endlessly, and when they are gone, the void can never be fully measured. Billy understood that better than anyone. That void doesn't belong only to Hollywood. It was in every unanswered call, every unfinished joke, every silence that had once been filled with laughter. Their 50-year friendship was more than just history. It was proof that genuine connection still exists, even in an industry built on illusion. When Billy finally spoke, he wasn't just expressing grief. He was speaking to protect his friend's legacy, to ensure Rob Reiner would be remembered for who he truly was, a storyteller who made the world warmer, wiser, and more human. The deaths of Rob and Michelle Reiner had far-reaching repercussions, extending beyond the film industry. This was no longer just a headline. It was the heartbreaking end of a friendship that helped shape modern cinema. Behind the fame and the flashing cameras lies the raw, real reality of life, love, regret, and the age-old question, could anyone have prevented what had happened? Billy's journey through grief becomes a silent lesson for all who follow him. It reminds us that even in the brightest moments, invisible shadows can still exist. Perhaps that's why their story is so powerful. It proves that behind every smile, every success, there's a fragile heart desperately trying to hold on. And now, it's your turn. What do you think? Could this heartbreaking story have been prevented, or has it dragged on for too long? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. See you in the next video.